My name is Emily Harper, and I'm sitting here because I need to tell you about the night my entire life flipped upside down. I'm 38, a writer living in Calgary, with my husband, Nathan Brooks, a financial advisor who could talk me out of any bad day with that smooth voice of his. For years, I thought we had it all: love, trust, a solid marriage. He'd wake me up with a kiss, make my coffee just right, and every night he'd hold me close and say I was his everything. I believed him. I mean, really believed him. Until one night, about 3 months ago, when I woke up at midnight to an empty bed. At first, I figured Nathan was downstairs grabbing a drink or checking emails. He did that sometimes. But then I heard his voice coming from his office down the hall, low, serious, nothing like the warm tone he used with me. I froze in bed, my heart suddenly pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. He said, "She still doesn't suspect anything. We're almost done. Everything's going as planned." I couldn't breathe for a second. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it. Who was he talking to? What didn't I suspect? I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just lay there gripping the sheets, pretending to sleep when he came back to bed a few minutes later. He slid under the covers like nothing happened, pulled the blanket over us, and I swear I could hear my own pulse. I didn't sleep that night. I just stared at the ceiling, feeling this cold pit in my stomach. My husband was hiding something big, and it was about me. The next morning, I was a wreck, but I didn't let it show. Nathan was still asleep, his breathing all calm and steady, like he hadn't just ripped my world apart. I went to the kitchen to make coffee, but my hands were shaking so bad, I could barely hold the mug. I kept thinking about what I'd heard. I'd never checked our finances before, because Nathan always handled that stuff. Bills, savings, investments. I trusted him completely. I thought that's what you do when you love someone. But that morning, I grabbed my phone and opened our banking app. My breath caught in my throat when I saw it. Dozens of transactions over the past 3 months. $500 here, $1,000 there, $750, $2,000. None of them huge, but together they added up to a lot. I gripped the kitchen counter so hard, my knuckles turned white, trying to steady myself. Then I heard Nathan's voice behind me. Checking the accounts this early. His tone was light, but I caught this quick flash of worry in his eyes as he leaned against the doorway, scratching his neck. I forced a smile and said, "Just curious. Some of these charges look weird." He walked over, poured himself coffee, and gave me this practiced grin. "Oh, those are just small investments. Must have forgotten to tell you." He took a sip and looked away. I nodded like I bought it, but inside I was screaming. He was lying to my face. I could feel it. That was the moment I stopped seeing him as my husband and started seeing him as someone I needed to watch. That night, I noticed everything. He was on his phone all the time, always turning it face down when I got close, always stepping outside to take calls. When I asked what he was working on, he'd just smile and say, "Just business. Nothing you need to worry about." But I was worried. I was beyond worried. I was scared and angry, and starting to feel this fire in my chest that I couldn't ignore. I wasn't going to sit there and wait for him to pull whatever he was planning. I needed to know what was going on. 2 days later, I got my shot. It was a quiet evening after dinner. Nathan said he was going to take a shower, and for once, he didn't take his phone with him. He always carried that thing like it was glued to his hand. But that night, he left it on the dining table. My heart was pounding so loud I thought he'd hear it from upstairs. I waited until I heard the water running, and then I grabbed it. His phone was unlocked. I don't know why, but it was. My fingers were shaking as I scrolled through his messages. Most of it was boring. Stuff, work, emails, group chats. But then I saw this one thread with no name, just a number. The latest message said, "Send her the Pine Trust files. Make sure she stays in the dark. Almost done." I read it 3 times, feeling my stomach twist. Pine Trust files. Who was she? Was it me? I felt sick. I put the phone back exactly where it was, walked to the kitchen, and splashed cold water on my face, trying to calm down. The shower was still running. I had a minute to think. Nathan wasn't just lying. He wasn't just cheating. He was planning something huge, and I was the target. When he came to bed that night, he kissed my forehead like always, and asked if I was okay. I said I was just tired and gave him a weak smile. Inside, I was burning. He thought I was clueless. He thought I was still the trusting wife who'd never question him. That was his mistake. I wasn't going to let him blindside me. The next morning, as soon as he left for work, I called my friend Lauren Mitchell. She's not just my old college buddy. She's a brilliant estate lawyer here in Calgary. I hadn't talked to her in a while, but we'd reconnected last year. When she picked up, I didn't waste time. I told her everything: Nathan's late-night call, the weird transactions, that creepy message about the Pine Trust files. My voice was shaking, but I got it all out. She listened without interrupting. When I was done, she asked one question. "How much money are we talking about?" I swallowed hard and said, "Close to $500 million." There was a long pause. Then she said, "Emily, we need to move your assets now." I felt my legs go weak, so I sat down on the couch. "Are you sure?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. "If you wait, he'll make his move first. We'll set up a trust in your name. He won't be able to touch it." I took a deep breath and said, "I'm in." That was the moment I stopped being the wife who trusted blindly and started being the woman who'd fight for what was mine. So, there I was, sitting on my couch in Calgary, feeling like the ground had just dropped out from under me. I just hung up with Lauren, my lawyer friend, who told me we needed to move my assets fast because Nathan, my husband, was clearly up to something shady. $500 million was on the line. Everything I'd worked for as a writer. Every royalty check. Every investment we'd built together. I was shaking, but not from fear anymore. It was this mix of anger and determination boiling up inside me. I kept replaying that message I'd seen on Nathan's phone about the Pine Trust files and keeping her in the dark. I knew it was about me. I wasn't going to let him pull this off, whatever it was. I stood up and started pacing the living room, trying to think straight. Lauren had said she'd get her team together to set up a trust in my name so Nathan couldn't touch a dime. I trusted her, but I also knew I couldn't just sit there and wait. I needed to dig deeper and figure out what Nathan was planning before he realized I was onto him. That afternoon, I started looking for more clues. Nathan was at work, so I had the house to myself. I went to his office, the same room where I'd heard him whispering that night. My heart was racing as I opened his desk drawers, looking for anything that could explain what was going on. Most of it was just boring. Paperwork, client contracts, receipts, nothing special. But then I found this locked drawer at the bottom. I tugged at it, but it wouldn't budge. I don't know what came over me, but I grabbed a paperclip from the desk and started messing with the lock. I'd never done anything like that before, but I was desperate. After a few minutes, the drawer popped open, and inside was a folder labeled Pine Trust. My hands were trembling as I opened it. There were pages of financial documents, bank transfers, account numbers, some with my name on them, but not in my handwriting. I felt sick to my stomach. These weren't my transactions. Someone had forged my signature. I took photos of everything with my phone and sent them to Lauren right away. She texted back almost immediately, saying, "This is bad. Don't touch anything else. I'm coming over tonight." When Lauren showed up, she brought her colleague James, a financial expert who worked with her firm. They sat me down at the dining table and started going through the photos I'd sent. Lauren's face was serious, but calm, like she'd seen this kind of thing before. She said the documents looked like part of a plan to move money out of our joint accounts into some offshore setup Nathan was controlling. James nodded and said the Pine Trust was likely a shell company tied to whoever Nathan was working with. I felt this wave of rage wash over me. My husband wasn't just betraying me, he was trying to steal everything I'd built. I asked Lauren what we could do, and she laid it out plain and simple. We'd move every asset I owned, the house, the savings, my book royalties, the investments, into a trust under my name only. It would be legally protected, so Nathan couldn't get near it. I didn't hesitate. I told her to do whatever it took. That night, we started the process. Lauren and James stayed until almost midnight, pulling up account details and drafting paperwork. I was exhausted, but I kept going, because I knew this was my only shot to protect myself. The next 2 days were a blur. Lauren's team worked like machines. I was on the phone, constantly signing documents and answering questions about every account I had. We transferred the title of our Calgary condo into the trust, locked down my investment portfolios, and moved every cent of my royalties into protected accounts. I felt this strange mix of panic and power, like I was finally taking control, but also terrified Nathan would figure it out before we were done. He'd come home each night, acting normal, smiling like nothing was wrong, even bringing takeout one evening and saying we should have a cozy night in. I played along, nodding and thanking him for the food, but inside I was screaming. He had no idea I'd seen the Pine Trust folder, or that I was moving everything out of his reach. I kept my phone close, making sure he didn't see any of the messages from Lauren. Every time he kissed my cheek or asked how my day was, I had to force myself to smile and say everything was fine. It was exhausting, pretending to be the clueless wife he thought I was. By the third day, we were almost done. Lauren called me that morning and said the trust was nearly finalized. She'd locked down everything except a couple of smaller accounts that needed one last signature. I was at the kitchen counter signing the final papers when Nathan walked in early from work. My heart stopped for a second, but I slid the papers under a stack of mail. Before he could see, he looked at me with this weird half-smile and asked what I was working on. I said it was just some boring book contract stuff and changed the subject, asking about his day. He bought it, or at least he acted like he did. That night, he went to bed early, saying he had a big meeting in the morning. I waited until I heard him snoring, and then I texted Lauren to confirm the last signatures were sent. She replied saying we were done. Everything was protected. I sat there in the dark, feeling this rush of relief, but also this heavy weight. I'd just done something I never thought I'd have to do. I'd built a wall between me and the man I'd loved for years. But I wasn't safe yet. Nathan was still out there planning his next move, and I knew he'd come for me soon. I just didn't know how or when. All I knew was I wasn't the same woman he'd underestimated. I was ready for whatever he tried next. I'm back, because things got even crazier after I locked down my assets, and Nathan still had no idea I was onto him. I was sitting in our Calgary condo feeling like I'd just won a secret battle, but also knowing the war wasn't over. I'd moved every cent of my $500 million, my book royalties, our savings, the condo title, into a trust Nathan couldn't touch, thanks to Lauren, my lawyer friend. I was still pretending everything was normal around him, smiling when he kissed my cheek, acting like the wife he thought I was. But inside, I was on edge, waiting for him to make his next move. I didn't have to wait long. 4 days after we finalized the trust, it was a Friday evening, and Nathan came home earlier than usual, looking way too polished in one of his tailored suits, carrying his briefcase like he was about to close a big deal. He set it down on the dining table and looked at me with this calm, almost smug expression that made my stomach turn. He said, "Emily, we need to talk," and slid a folder across the table. I didn't flinch, even though my heart was pounding. I opened it slowly, and there they were, divorce papers. He sat back, crossing his arms, and said, "I think it's for the best. We've grown apart. I don't want this to get messy." I looked up at him, keeping my face blank, but inside I was raging. This was his plan all along: blindside me with a divorce and take half my fortune. I took a deep breath and slid the folder back to him, saying, "Before we go any further, there's something you should know." He raised an eyebrow, looking confused for the first time. I leaned forward just a bit and said, "I've already moved everything. The condo, the accounts, my royalties, all of it's in a protected trust now. You can't touch a dime." His face changed like someone had flipped a switch. The smugness was gone, and his eyes went wide, then narrow. He said, "What do you mean?" I kept my voice steady and said, "I mean, you don't get to walk in here, hand me divorce papers, and walk away with half my life." He clenched the folder so hard, his knuckles turned white, and for a second I thought he might yell, but he just stared at me, searching for some crack in my resolve. I didn't give him one. I said, "You were right about one thing, Nathan. Life's unpredictable." He stood up, slow his jaw tight, and said, "We'll see about this in court." I stood too and said, "Go ahead. Try." He grabbed his briefcase and walked out, leaving me standing there, feeling this mix of triumph and dread. I'd beaten him to the punch. But I knew he wasn't done. 3 days later, things took a darker turn. I started noticing weird stuff at work. I'm a writer, but I also sit on the board of a publishing company in Calgary, and my colleagues who usually joked around with me were acting strange. People I'd known for years were avoiding eye contact, whispering when I walked by. At first I thought I was imagining it, but it kept happening. Then my assistant, Sophie Chen, came into my office one afternoon, looking pale, holding a printout. She said, "Emily, you need to see this," and handed it to me. It was a screenshot from some anonymous online forum, a post titled, "Calgary Exec Hides Millions in Divorce Scheme." The post didn't name me, but it described a female executive siphoning company funds to protect herself in a divorce, hinting it was illegal. In the comments, someone wrote, "It's Emily Harper. Check her accounts." I felt the blood drain from my face. I knew Nathan was behind this. It was his way of hitting back, trying to ruin my reputation because he couldn't get my money. I looked at Sophie and said, "He's trying to destroy me." She nodded and said, "If this spreads, it could tank your career." I stood up, pacing the room, feeling this fire in my chest. I'd spent years building my name in this industry, earning every bit of respect with my work. No handouts, no shortcuts. And now Nathan was trying to tear it all down with lies. I grabbed my phone and called Lauren, telling her everything. My voice was shaking with anger and fear, but I got it out: the post, the comments, the whispers at work. She listened, and when I was done, she said, "He's playing dirty, Emily. He wants to scare you into settling. We're not letting him." She told me she'd draft a cease and desist letter to shut down the rumors, and if Nathan kept pushing, we'd sue him for defamation. I hung up feeling this tiny spark of hope. He thought he could break me with lies, but he didn't know I was ready to fight back harder. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how Nathan had gone from the man I loved to someone who'd spread lies to hurt me. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about my name, my career, everything I'd worked for. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark, scrolling through that forum post again, feeling sick but also angry enough to keep going. Lauren called the next morning, saying she'd sent the cease and desist to Nathan's lawyer and was digging into who posted the forum thread. She said it wouldn't be easy to trace, but she had a tech guy on her team who could try. I thanked her and told her to do whatever it took. I was done playing nice. Nathan thought he could scare me into backing down, but he'd underestimated me. I'd protected my money, and now I was going to protect my name. I knew he'd try something else, something bigger. But I was ready. I had Lauren. I had proof. And I had this fire inside me that wasn't going out. Whatever he threw at me next, I'd be waiting. I'm still here because Nathan didn't stop after those online rumors tried to ruin my name. I thought the whispers at work and that nasty forum post accusing me of hiding money were bad, but 3 days after I told you about that mess, things got so much worse. I was in my Calgary condo, trying to focus on work, when Lauren, my lawyer friend, called me, and her voice was sharp, like she was holding back anger. She said, "Emily, he just filed a lawsuit against you." I felt my stomach drop, and I had to sit down on the couch to keep my legs from giving out. I asked what he was suing for, and Lauren said, "He's accusing you of financial fraud. He claims you illegally moved marital assets and embezzled money from your joint accounts." I couldn't believe it. My hands were shaking as I gripped the phone, and I said, "He's lying. He can't be serious." But Lauren was dead serious. She said there was more and told me to come to her office right away. When I got there, she slid a file across her desk, and I opened it feeling this mix of fear and fury. The lawsuit wasn't just from Nathan. He'd teamed up with someone named Vincent Leclerc, a name I recognized from that creepy Pine Trust message I'd seen on Nathan's phone months ago. I looked at Lauren and said, "Who is this guy?" She crossed her arms and said, "Vincent's a known fraudster. He's been tied to shady deals, forging documents, but never convicted." I flipped through the lawsuit papers and saw pages of fake transactions with my name on them, bank transfers, account details that looked real, but weren't. Some even had my signature, but I knew I'd never signed them. I slammed the file shut and said, "These are fake. He's trying to bury me with lies." Lauren nodded and said, "We know, but we have to prove it, and we have to move fast." I felt this fire in my chest, like all the fear I'd been carrying was turning into something else, something fierce. I told her, let's make sure his lies blow up in his face. That week was brutal. Lauren brought in a forensic finance expert named Rachel Kim, who started digging into every detail of those fake documents. I barely slept because we were working around the clock, pulling real bank records, tracking every transaction I'd ever made, and comparing them to Nathan's claims. I was on the phone with Rachel, constantly answering questions about old accounts and book royalties, while Lauren built a case to tear Nathan's lawsuit apart. I felt like I was running on pure adrenaline, because this wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about my integrity and my right to keep what I'd earned. Nathan had already tried to ruin my reputation with those rumors, and now he was coming for my freedom with this fraud accusation. I kept thinking about that Pine Trust folder I'd found in his office, and how he'd planned this for months, maybe even years. It made me sick, but it also made me fight harder. One night, I was sitting at my kitchen table going through bank statements when Rachel called and said she'd found something big. She'd traced the fake transactions to a shell company tied to Vincent Leclerc's firm. The dates on Nathan's documents didn't match our real records, and the signatures were off by just enough to prove they were forged. I felt this rush of hope, but also this heavy weight, because we weren't done yet. We had to make sure every piece of evidence was airtight before we faced Nathan in court. Lauren and Rachel worked like a machine, putting together a defense that could bury Nathan's lies. They pulled digital records showing every move I'd made with my money was legal and protected by the trust we'd set up. They even found emails between Nathan and Vincent that Lauren's tech guy got through some legal subpoena. Those emails mentioned the Pine Trust and how they'd handle me to get the money. I read them and felt this cold anger because this was proof Nathan wasn't just betraying me, he was conspiring against me with a criminal. I wanted to confront him right then, but Lauren said, "We had to wait for court." She said, "Let him think he's winning. It'll make his fall harder." I trusted her, so I kept playing my part, acting like nothing was wrong when Nathan called to check in. He'd moved out after the divorce papers, but he'd still call pretending to be civil, asking how I was doing. I'd force a smile into my voice and say I was fine, but inside I was counting down to the moment we'd face him with the truth. It was exhausting keeping up the act, but I knew it was the only way to stay one step ahead. By the end of the week, we had everything we needed. Rachel's report was bulletproof, showing the fake documents came from Vincent's firm and had no connection to my real accounts. Lauren had a stack of evidence, bank records, emails, digital timestamps, that proved I'd done nothing wrong. I felt this strange calm settle over me, not because I thought it was over, but because I knew we were ready. Nathan had thrown everything at me, lies, rumors, lawsuits, but I had the truth on my side, and I had Lauren and Rachel fighting with me. I wasn't the woman he'd underestimated anymore. I was someone who'd learned to fight back, and I was about to show him what that meant. Court was coming, and I was ready to walk in there and watch his whole plan collapse. I'm sitting here now because it's finally over, and I need to tell you how it all ended. A month after Nathan hit me with that fraud lawsuit, we walked into a Calgary courtroom, and I was ready to finish this fight. I'd been through months of hell, finding out my husband was plotting against me, moving my $500 million into a trust, dealing with his lies and rumors, and now facing his fake lawsuit, claiming I'd stolen our money. Lauren, my lawyer, and Rachel, our forensic expert, had built a case so solid I knew we had Nathan cornered. I sat next to Lauren in the courtroom, dressed in a navy blazer, feeling steady, even though my heart was racing. Across the room, Nathan sat with his lawyer looking tense and angry, like he knew he was in trouble. His partner in crime, Vincent Leclerc, that shady fraudster from the Pine Trust scheme, didn't even show up, which Lauren said was a good sign. The judge started going through our evidence, and I watched Nathan's face get tighter with every document Lauren presented. We had everything: bank records, proving my transactions were legal, emails between Nathan and Vincent plotting to frame me, Rachel's report showing their fake documents didn't match reality. Nathan's lawyer tried to argue, but it was weak, and you could tell the judge wasn't buying it. When the ruling came, I closed my eyes for a second, not because I was relieved, but because it felt final. The judge threw out Nathan's lawsuit, saying there was no evidence of fraud. He was denied any claim to my trust, and because his lies had cost me so much, the judge ordered him to pay my legal fees. I looked at Nathan, and he wouldn't meet my eyes. He just sat there like a man who'd lost everything. After the hearing, Nathan tried to talk to me in the hallway. He walked up looking smaller than I'd ever seen him and said, "You didn't have to do this, Emily." I stared him down, feeling this calm anger, and said, "No, Nathan, you didn't have to do this." Then I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there alone. I didn't feel like celebrating because winning doesn't always feel like a party. It felt like I could finally breathe again, after months of holding my breath. I went back to my condo that night and just sat on the couch in the quiet, thinking about everything. I'd fought so hard to protect my money, my name, my life, and I'd won, but it wasn't joy I felt. It was peace, like the storm was finally over. The next few weeks, I started picking up the pieces. I went back to writing, working on a new book that felt like a fresh start. I took long walks by myself, thinking about what I'd been through. I didn't throw a victory party or tell everyone what happened because I didn't need to. I just needed to keep moving forward one step at a time. Looking back, I learned something huge from all this, and I want every woman out there to hear it. Trust is something you give, but control over your life is something you keep. No matter how much you love someone, don't ever hand over your power without knowing what's going on. Know what you're worth and protect it. Be ready to act when things don't feel right, because waiting can cost you everything. Nathan thought he could break me with his lies and schemes, but I stood my ground and let the truth do the talking. It wasn't about revenge, it was about taking back what was mine. I'm not saying it was easy. There were nights I felt scared and alone wondering if I'd lose everything. But I kept going because I knew I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting for me, for the woman I'd worked to become. If you're listening to this and you're going through something like I did, don't give up. You're stronger than you think, and the truth is stronger than any lie someone tries to throw at you. I want to thank you for listening to my story, because it means a lot to know you're out there. If this hit home for you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think, because we're all in this together. Strength isn't just about getting through the hard stuff. It's about learning to stand taller when it's over. I'm not the same person I was when this started. I'm stronger now, and I know what I'm capable of. Nathan's gone, and I'm still here writing my next chapter. That's my victory, and I'm owning it.